We're doing an overview of the Maamar V'chol Bonayich, Tavshin Mem Aleph, Parshas Vayishlach, Yud Daled Kislev. This Maamar was printed for the 60th year of the Rebbe's Chasana, and it's based on a Maamar which the Friedrich Rebbe said by the Rebbe's Chasana in Tafresh Peites and in Drushei Chasana. V'chol Bonayich Lemudi Havaya Rav Shalom Bonayich. This is a pasuk from Yeshaya. And there are two explanations to V'chol Bonayich, as discussed there in the Maamar Tafresh Peites from the Friedrich Rebbe. And we explain there that there are two pirushim. The first one is that V'chol Bonayich Lemudei Hashem, that those who are learning Lemudei Hashem, that there should be a lot of shalom for your children. Now, Pasha simply means, as the Targum and Metzudas David says, that it should be a lot of shalom, should be a lot of peace for Bonayich, for your children. The second shot is that through Bonayich, V'chol Bonayich, that there becomes a lot of shalom, a lot of peace in the world. As Talmidei, as the Gemara says, Talmidei Chachamim marbim shalom ba'olam, atikre Bonayich ela Bonayich. That you shouldn't read it that it's your V'chol Bonayich, that it's not your Bonayich, your children, but Bonayich, those who are building. Because the Talmidei Chacham are called the Bonayich, those who are building, those who are involved in those who are Isaac B'Vinyan Shalaylam, those who are involved in the building of the world. That through learning Torah, through that you are involved with the Binyan Shalaylam, through the building of the world. And so V'chol Bonayich, there's two inyanim. There are those that are learning. Talmidei Chachamim that are learning V'chol Bonayich, and then there's also those who are bringing shalom to the world. That through Torah you bring shalom, you bring peace to the world. You're Bonayich, you are building also the world, as explained there in the Maamar. In the end, we explain the idea of Rav Shalom Bonayich, Atikre Bonayich Ela Bonayich, that through those that are involved with the Binyan Shalaylam, those who are involved with building of the world, that also brings the shalom, that also brings to the peace, as it says, that through being involved with the beer in the world, through that is also brought to the Talmidei Chachamim that they should also have peace with themselves as well. In other words, so these two pirushim go together, that through that the Talmidei Chacham are Isaac with Binyan Shalaylam, they're involved with the Birur of Binyanim in the world. Through that also brings a lot of peace to them. So these two pirushim really are very much connected. This is the idea that is explained in the Maamar there, as the Rebbe explains it here. And the Rebbe doesn't really get back to the explanation of V'chol Bonayich until the very end of the Maamar, where the Rebbe brings out that this is especially through Pnimius HaTorah, and the Bonayich of the building of the world comes especially through Pnimius HaTorah, as we'll explain at the end. But now, in Ois Beis, the Rebbe continues on and explains and connects it to Parshas Vayishlach, which is the Parsha of the week. Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim Lefanov, and over there he says, Christ Sarmar L'Adoni L'Esav, you should tell Esav, Im Lavan Garti, V'Eichar Adata. With Lavan I lived, and that's where I am till now. So this means that Yaakov is saying that I have to, that in order to come to Esav, the first thing that I have to do is go to Lavan. In other words, he's saying that really I should have first been to Esav. But V'Eichar Adata, but I took some time, and it came a little bit late. Why? Because I first had to go to Lavan. So the question is, why does it seem that he had to go right away to Esav? And he says, Va'echar, that I came late. That's question number one. And also the question is, what does it mean, Im Lavan Garti, V'taryag mitzvah shomarti, right? Rashi explains that the taryag mitzvah shomarti, that I kept the taryag mitzvah. Since when does Esav care whether or not he's Mekayim the taryag mitzvah? So why is he telling him that I was Mekayim the taryag mitzvahs? And so the explanation of this is that the brachas that Yaakov gave to the brachas that Yitzchak gave to Yaakov was in order to be mevar Esav, and in order to be mevar Esav, he had to first go to deal with Lavan, and that's why he says Im Lavan Garti Va'echar Ad Ata. that the reason that I had to first go, that Bemes I should really come to Esav. But in order to do that, I have to first finish my avodah with the birurim of Lavan, and then as soon as I'm done with that, I'm able to come to deal with the birurim of Esav. What is the reason that he has to first deal with the birurim of Lavan in order to be mevar Esav? So there are two inyanim here of why he has to first deal with the birurim of Lavan, and only after that could he deal with Esav. So the first thing is because in order to be mevar Esav, you have to have a tremendous R, a very high R, and in order to deal with that kind of birurim. And so therefore he has to first deal with Lavan. Why Lavan? Because Lavan is the level of what we call loivin ha'elyon. Loivin ha'elyon, the higher whiteness, which is referring to l'mayla mehishtalshlus, a very high level, higher than ishtalshlus. And once he was able to deal with this, and he was able to bring down that great R to a point that he's able to even draw it down to all his inyanim, as it says that he woke up, that Lavan woke up in the morning by nashik levana of levnaisav, which means that the idea of kissing, meaning that he's bringing it down to all the inyanim of Yaakov, that he's able to bring down that high inyan of Lavan, of Lavan Elyon, he's able to bring it down. Then only then could he be mevar Esau. And the second reason why he has to first be mevar Lavan is because Esav is Esav is not only the way it is in a higher level, but also the way it is in Klippa. That in Klippa, the way it comes down, Esav is lower than Lavan, because Lavan refers to Keser, Chochma, and Bina of Klippa, and Esav is the Zayin Midas, Chesed, Gvur, Tferes, Netzach, Chod, Yisoid, and Malchus of Klippas Nega. So Lavan is the higher aspect of Klippa, which is Keser, Chochma, and Bina, which is the higher of the 10 spheres, and Esav refers to the Zayin Midas, which is the lower level within Klippa. And so therefore he has to be mevar Lavan first, and then he can go to Esav. He has to deal with the higher level with Keser and Chachma and Bina, and only then could he deal with the Midas, which is the lower level. So we have over here two aspects. Number one, because Lavan is a much higher level, the way it is in its shirish, in its source, but also the way it comes down here, that the Lavan of Klippa is a so to speak a higher level, which has to be dealt with first. Now, based on this, Yaakov is working his way upwards, downwards. In other words, he's first dealing Mamayla Lamata. He's first dealing with the higher art, with the higher Gili, the higher level, and then he's bringing it down to the lower level. Why? Why is it that he's working Mamayla Lamata? Because Yaakov refers to Torah. That there are three Avos, and which are referring to the three Tavin of Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. So Avram is Gemilas Chasadim, Yitzchak is Avodah, and Yaakov is Torah. And when you talk about Torah, the birurim that happens through Torah is in a way of Mamayla Lamata. As it's explained in Padav Shalom, that the difference between the birurim of Tefillah and the birur of Torah, that Tefillah is Milmata Lamayla, meaning that you're working your way up. You're dealing with the Mizbara, which is the one that has to be Mevar, and you're working your way up. Machenkin Torah, you're always working Mamayla Lamata. In other words, it's a Giloi that's automatically affecting the lower level. Because when you're dealing with when you're working your way upwards, then you're first mevar the higher things and then the lower things. But if you're working way up, you have to first be mevar the lower things, and then you're able to be mevar the higher things. And now, the way we are now, in general, we work in a way mamata lamayla. We have to first deal with the lower things, with the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. And so we begin with the zayin tachtonis, which is the 7 midas, and you're able to work your way up for first be mevar the zayin midas, and then you could deal with the higher levels, which is keser, chachma, and bina. So when we, meaning dealing with the Yidden, even going back to the Yidden that came into Eretz Yisrael, They had to first deal as well, first with the lower level, with the 7 midas, with Keni, Kizik, Hadmoni, etc., which is 7 midas. That's Yeshua, was first via the 7 midas. But Lasud Lavai, and only Lasud Lavai you'll be able to reach the other ones. But when it came to Yaakov, he dealt with Ma'al Lamata, which is the union of Torah. So he first dealt with the Birurim that was involved with Keser Chochma Bina, which is Lavan. And then only afterwards he could deal with the Zayim Midas, which is associated with Asa. Now, while this is true that in a certain way it's higher to deal to work this way, it's a higher level to be able to deal with Maila Lamata, but there still is a Maila in doing it the other way, meaning you're working your way from down up. Lamata Lamaila, there's a Maila in that too. Why? Because when you're coming Maila Lamata, when you're coming from a higher level working with the lower level, then that means that anything that you're being mavar, anything that you're affecting in the lower level, is only because there's a higher gili art. In other words, it's something that is so strong and so powerful that is automatically going to be overwhelming and overpowering in the lower and that lower level that you're going to be mavar. But when you're dealing with mata lamaila, what you're doing is you're actually making that the lower level becomes a keli for elikos, and then you're able to work your way upwards. In other words, you're dealing with the bottom itself. You're dealing with the lower things themselves, making them being able to receive that. And then you're working your way upwards. Where if it's coming milmaila lamata, then you may be affecting the lower level, but in a way that it's almost being forced upon it from that higher way. And that's why after Yaakov was able to bring about this beer in Esav, and to a point that he completely affected Esav. We see that Esav came over and he hugged him and he kissed him, and it was like Esav was a different person. But then afterwards, Esav said, "Come with me, come along." Yaakov said, "I'm not ready yet. It's going to take some time until eventually I'll come back to Seir." And when's that going to be? When's Yaakov going to come back to Seir, back to Esav, to his level? And that's going to be when Mashiach comes. Why? Because the beer that happened through Yaakov and Ma'al Lamata didn't actually change Esav. It affected Esav for the time being, but then you have many years until Esav is actually going to be completely changed, and the ultimate beer where he is going to be a full keli to be Mekabel, that Gili which is coming through him. And that's why the beginning of the beer of Yaakov had to be Mamayla Lamata, but Yaakov was able to give the koyach that through that you could have the beer Mamata Lamayla as well. In other words, Yaakov opened up the door, so to speak, for the birurim of Esav to come about, and then only afterwards, many years later, until Mashiach comes, we won't have that full beer that comes about, the birurim of Esav. We're continuing in Eisvav. That if the Torah is nitzchis and all the stories in Haros and Torah are nitzchis, so being that according to what we're saying, our avodah now in general is mamata lamaila. So why did the Torah give such detail and such length talking about Vayishlach Yaakov el Esav, which was a bir mamaila lamata, which it seems to be only an avodah of Yaakov, somebody on the level of Yaakov, to deal with the higher level first, with the Gimel Russian, with the Keser Chachma Bina, associated with Lavan, and only afterwards Esav. If our avodah, it seems to be that our avodah is the opposite. We have to work bottom up. We have to work milmata lamayla. So why is the Torah going to such detail telling us to this if this is seemingly not our avodah now? So we could say that by Yaakov, where Yitzchak had the avodah ma'alamata, but it's also a siman seen as koyach for us, for Yaakov's children, to be able to have this avodah as well. But aside from the fact that Yaakov is a nesinas koyach for the avodah ma'amata l'mayla, in other words, not only is he giving us the ability to be able to work on our type of aveda, mamata lamaila, but he's also giving us the koyach that for the banim, for the generation afterwards, that they could also work in Yaakov's type of level, which is mamata lamata, working the way up down, which is in general through Torah. But in Torah specifically, this is the birurim of pnimius Torah, as because the ikar birurim mamata lamata happens through, especially primarily, even though in general through Torah is Lamata, but in more specific way we find this by Pnimius HaTorah. Why? Because through Nigla the Torah is involved, is being mislabish in Yanim of Eitz Hadas Toivera, meaning it's more involved with Birur. There are things that Nigla the Torah deals with, which has to change some things in a way that may be that may be good or bad. Not always is it the best way, and so it's almost like a way of mulchama. It's almost like a war, like a way where it has to battle with those in Yanim in a way of Nigla Torah. But Pnimius Torah is called Ilana Dechaya. It's called the living tree, meaning that it doesn't have to be mislabish in it. It doesn't have to deal to directly get involved with the Taivara, but it affects the world in a positive way, in a way that it doesn't have to get its hands dirty, so to speak. So the difference between Nigla and Pnimius HaTorah, it's in a general way that Pnimius HaTorah is a birur milmayla lamata, and in a more general way, Nigla the Torah is lamata lamayla. But in a pratistic way, each of them have both of these inyanim. So we find that in Tanya, when you learn in our Tanya, which is Pnimius HaTorah, so you have two aspects. That Tanya is called. It's the Tanya says that Pnimius HaTorah is a mitzvah rama v'nisa mevia l'lev of shalim. That it's a very tremendous mitzvah, but it also brings to a leiv shalim. In other words, there's two inyanim of Pnimius HaTorah. Number one, it brings to a leiv shalim, which means to a complete heart, which means that it brings to be mevar the midas, that our midas, that we become a better person through learning Torah. And the second aspect is that through learning and knowing Pnimius HaTorah, it is also a mitzvah ram mitzvah. It's a very great and awesome mitzvah, which is higher than birurim. In other words, even though in general Pnimius HaTorah is a birum mamayla lamata, but it does have as well the aspect of mamata lamayla because it's able to affect and change our midas. Then it has the mamayla lamata aspect, which is that it is a great and awesome mitzvah of learning the Pnimius HaTorah, something that is far beyond just affecting who we are. It is something that is very great and awesome and powerful. And the same thing, on the other hand, you also have a Nigla Torah. You have the idea of learning Nigla Torah, where no Dreish v'Kabel Schar, that you're not learning L'maisa v'Payil. You're just learning the Torah for the Yin of Torah itself. And in a more general way, you see this more by Torah Shebechsav, because by Torah Shebechsav, you're not necessarily learning to know how to know what to do, or even more so when we find the Sipurim, the stories in Torah Shebechsav. In other words, that's Torah in a very pure way, where you're not learning it for something. You're not learning it in order to know what to do, but you're learning Torah for its purity. We also find that when by Torah Shebechsav, even if you just say the words and you don't even know what it means, but that's also learning Torah. So in a certain way, that has the birurim like Pnimius HaTorah, Mamayla Lamata, that it affects the person in a way that he doesn't even feel, he doesn't even know it. He could be saying things he doesn't even know what it means. So those are certain aspects of Torah Shebechsav, and we said especially the stories of Torah Shebechsav, which is not Negea L'maisa. And in that itself, you can have someone that just says the words and not even know what it means, but for learning Torah. And then, but the aspect of learning in order to know what to do. So in that we have in that it's more the aspect of momata l'mayla. In other words, you're dealing with the mata in order to be mevar the mata. That's the aspect of Torah of knowing what to do. And then you find in Pnimius HaTorah as well that you Tanya, which is the Torah Shebechsav of Chassidus, you have one aspect of it, which is that it's a mamayla lamata, it's a standalone, so to say, a higher aspect of learning. Then you also have the aspect which is shaykh the birurim, like it says over there, kikari v'lecha. What is it? What does that mean? That Karev Ma'id is la soisa in order to know what to do. In other words, you have to know how to affect the person, how to change the person. And so you have within Nigla Torah and Pnimis Torah, you have both aspects of Lamata Lamayla, Lamayla Lamata. This is in a more specific way, but in a general way, Pnimis Torah in general is Ilana Dechaye, the living tree, which is higher than Bidurim. And you don't, and in general, the Bidurim, which happens for Pnimis Torah, you don't have to get involved with the Mispar. But when it comes to Nigla the Torah over there, you have to get more involved. And so therefore, in general, in a more general fashion, Pnimis Torah is associated with Mamayla Lamata, and Nigla the Torah is more with Lamata Lamayla. Now, getting back to Yaakov, Bir of Yaakov, which is Mamayla Lamata. So he so just like in Pnimis HaTorah, where you had in general the idea of Momai Lamata, that you have to first deal with the Yaakov first dealt with the Gimel Russian, which is Keser Chachma and Bina. So the same thing, when it comes to Limud Pnimis HaTorah as well, you're also beginning the Limud HaTorah and Limud Achsidis. Rabbi said it's over here, Limud Achsidis. That you're Mavar, you're Meichin. And also the Nefesh Bahamas, but you start with the Meichin, and then including the Meichin, which affects your Midas, and then you're able to deal with the Nefesh Bahamas and your Midas involved. By Nigla the Torah is Be'ikar your Midas. The way you feel, to be able to deal with your Midas, with your emotions. And the Meichin which are associated with Midas. But by Pnimis Torah it's the opposite. By Limud Torah, so you're dealing primarily with your Meichin, and then it's Mevi al Lev of Shalom. Then that will affect your heart, will affect your Midas, and even though ultimately to really conquer your Midas, it's going to be loss of Lavai, but we have a main of this as well now, and that's learning Pnimis Torah. And that's why, getting back to our original question, the question was, why is it that the Torah has to tell us all these stories about Yaakov if we seemingly don't have a connection to the concept of Limud, to the concept of Mamayla Lamata, like Yaakov, the Bidur of Yaakov? So the answer is we do. We have it in a certain way. And that is the way we learn Pnimis HaTorah and the Birurim that starts with the Gimel Russian and the bidurim that happened through Pnimis HaTorah, so we have that now as well. And so therefore, this is considered a hayra for us in these days as well. Next, Ice Test. Rabbi adds on that from these bidurim of Yaakov is also in the order of Nigla and Pnimis HaTorah. That even though, in general, we begin by learning Nigla the Torah in a way of Yigia, and then comes to Pnimis HaTorah, that we find, for example, by the Arizal, that before he got to anything in Pnimis HaTorah, it says he would sweat tremendously in order to break the break the klippas of halacha. In other words, he would first learn halacha, first learn Nigla the Torah. He would sweat tremendously with those halachas, and then he would look in 6 different ways in halacha, and when he was able to deal with the nigla, the halacha, only then would he go to the side. Only then would he go to the Pnimis HaTorah. So in other words, the order seems to be that you begin with the nigla, the Torah, and then you go to Pnimis HaTorah. But nevertheless, even though that's true that you have to that the nigla the Torah has to come in a certain way before Pnimis HaTorah, but you have to have the basics, the foundations of Pnimis HaTorah before you go to nigla the Torah. And in order that you want to have your nigla the Torah to be proper, you have to first have the foundations of Pnimis HaTorah. Why? Because nigla the Torah is very limited. It's bahagbala, but Pnimis HaTorah is beligvul. And so through that you know your inyanim of Pnimis HaTorah, that is the foundation, that is your hanacha. And only after that you could go to start understanding Torah properly. And then you're able to, then your learning will be in a way that there will be also in a way of, so to speak, bleak vul kiyarchi will be lamalam didavag that your learning will be in a way that it won't affect you. And the Rebbe has in parentheses that you're not going to be so worried about the time and the time of your seder learning, and you won't even have to pay attention to that. So through limud hanigla, that affects that it should be in that through limud hachsidus, your limud hanigla will be in a way in the malam didavag. And then your limud hanigla itself will be in a much more in a much more powerful way. And even though we said in general nigla is associated with hislapshus, being mislabish in the mispar, but this is going to be in such a great way you're learning if you have the basics and the foundations of Pnimiyas HaTorah. Now, this that through Pnimiyas HaTorah actually helps your limud of nigla as well. But in order to have the ultimate of Jer B'Tachtoinim, you have to have that the Tachtoin should be a keli of Elikus. And that is dafke through b'mevarer b'derech hislapshus. In other words, being involved with the Tachtoinim. And that is through bringing down the idea of Pnimiyas HaTorah to Nigla HaTorah. Because through that, your Nigla HaTorah is going to be much greater. And the Birurim, which happens through a limit of Nigla, is going to be much greater, and that's going to affect the Inyanan that you're being Mevar in a much more powerful way. So when you have this partnership of Pnimiyas HaTorah and Nigla HaTorah together, then you're able to do your Birur in a much greater and a much more powerful way. Now getting back to the opening of the Maamar, v'chol Bonayich lemudi havaya v'rav sholem Bonayich. The chol Bonayich lemudi havaya. Those that are learning the Torah of Hashem, learning the Torah of Havaya, that is in general learning Torah. But we find this especially with Pnimiyas HaTorah. And learning the Pnimiyas HaTorah, so then even the way it is with the Pnimiyas HaTorah itself, then you have Rav Shalom Bonayich. So we say, Al tikre Bonayich, Ela Bonayich. What does it mean? Those who are building the world, meaning those who are involved with the birur of the world, which is the birur that's happening through the Bonayich Lemudi Hashem, through those that are learning Torah. And this happens through being mile of the Torah the way it is itself. And so therefore, you are bringing those who are Bonayich Lemudi Hashem, those who are learning Torah, are going to make the fact that they're being Isaac in the beer of the world, the Bonayich, those who are building the world. So that's going to be in a much more powerful way through learning Torah in this way. And then the Talmidei Chachamim would have them by themselves as well. They will also be Rav Shalom Bonayich, then they will have the ultimate Shalom. So this is going back to the beginning of the Maamar, where this is both together, that through being involved with Binyan Shel Olam, through that is Rav Shalom, you're going to have a lot of peace. This is especially through the limud HaTorah, the way we explained before, especially through Pnimiyas HaTorah, because Pnimiyas HaTorah is able to bring about the ultimate, the ultimate elevation, the milas of the Nyanim of being mile of the mile of the Birurim of the world, especially through Pnimiyas HaTorah being together with Nigla the Torah.